Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. Today is the day that we do the review of the Grand Seiko Spring Drive GMT. This is reference number SBGE001. And as a lot of you know, this is not my personal watch. This is on loan to me from a family member. And I've spent the last couple weeks with it and it is fantastic. So I hope that as we get in depth into this and I show you all the aspects of the watch, that you can get a good sense of just how special this piece is. This is really a worthy grail. It's a fantastic luxury sport watch, and I hope you enjoy this video. Okay, so let's start off with the case. We have one of Seiko's, just classic sport case shapes with the round bulbous form, with the shorter sweeping lugs and the crown at the 4 o'clock position. Similar to what they've done for decades, and it is perfectly executed on this example. And I hope you can get a sense through the video and through the photos that I will be inlaying over top of the video just how perfect this case is and just how magical that Soratsu finishing really is in real life. It's mesmerizing. People will ask, is it really as good as Rolex and Omega? I mean, is the Soratsu finishing really all it's cracked up to be? And just with my experience, I say yes. I think that the level of finishing is incredible. I mean, you can see me here behind my phone perfectly. It's like a mirror. I've never seen polishing this sharp and this just brilliant, or grain, the grain brushing just so deep. And bear in mind, this is done by hand by one of Seiko's master craftsmen over there in Japan, and it is just a work of art. It's really kind of breathtaking. So yes, it is fantastic. I've not seen finishing better on anything less than $10,000. It is incredible. The Soratsu finishing hype is absolutely real. So the dimensions of the case, it is a rather large sport watch, but like all Seikos with this kind of sport case styling, it wears much smaller. So I'd say it wears like its size. Let me give you a wrist shot here. The lugs just kind of arc down and hug to the wrist. It's very comfortable. The crown is kind of recessed there into the side of the case. So it might look large on my 7.25 inch wrists, but in reality, it's very comfortable, and I think they got the size spot on. I like the larger size on the sport watches, and Seiko has just done this so impeccably. There's really nothing to criticize, and you also get drilled lugs there, which is always a welcome thing. I love drilled lugs on any watch. So let's turn our attention to the dial. We'll just go aspect by aspect of this watch until we cover the entire thing. The dial has a flat black. There's no gloss, there's no texture. It is just completely void of color. And it's excellent. It's excellent. Grand Seiko, I mean, they're known for making some of the most beautiful dials that you can buy on a watch. I mean, they're absolutely mesmerizing with the different colors and textures that they're able to do. But they think they chose purposefully to just do something void of color, absolutely nonchalant, so that the rest of the dial, the indices, the hands, the printing, the power reserve, can really shine on such a flat canvas. So if we get closer here, if you look at those indices, they are dimensional. They are incredible, really. I mean, look at all those facets with the high polish. I mean, the sharp edges, they really catch the light. And I mean, these don't feel like, brass that's been stamped and polished and plated. I mean, I don't know what the process is with these particular indices, but they are mesmerizing. And if you look at a macro level, I'll drop in some photos, you can see some very faint perpendicular, horizontal, linear striations along those indices. And I mean, that's such a minute level. You can barely see it here with the naked eye, but if you look under a loupe with this thing, or you zoom in with your camera, you can absolutely see those little tiny striations that help catch the light. These indices kind of remind me of like a diamond. I mean, the angles are sharp, they're reflective, they just hold a vast amount of light and they just look brilliant. So you can see here that the 12, 3, 6, and 9 is a little bit thicker, a little bit more angular, and those are the only sections on the indices that have a small amount of lume on the outer tip. If you look at the chapter ring, you can see Arabic numerals 1 through 23, all the odd ones. And that is for, if you see, it's kind of hidden under the minute hand. But this is a GMT, and this is a true GMT, meaning where if I pull out the crown, and I'll just show you that right now. Let's pull out the crown. Get it to its first position. And if I go this way, you can see how I'm moving the hour hand. And notice the second hand does not stop. So it's a true GMT, and if I go the other way, so it's the ultimate traveler's watch. And I just wanted to point that out. So the chapter ring has those Arabic numerals so that you can keep track of your home time zone. And it's interesting because if you look at the bezel, the rotating bezel, you have all the Arabic numerals, all the even ones. So you actually have 1 through 23 just alternating between the bezel and the chapter ring. So that's pretty cool. I really like that. If you look at those hands, okay, we have really dimensional hands, high polished chamfered edges with a deep grain brushing on the top, and a nice little bit of lume that's applied. And that's okay because this is a sport watch, so it's fine to have lume on it. Even though it feels more like a dress watch, it is absolutely a sport watch, and those hands are so dimensional, and they match the indices very well. The level of finishing is really just impeccable. If you look at the printing, the logos, Seiko and the GS logo, those are all metal, and they're applied, and they're slightly raised off the face of the dial. And then the Grand Seiko spring drive, that printing is so crisp, so clean, so perfect. And if you get it in the right light, with the right sunlight, you can see it's actually slightly reflective. I don't know if there's some diamond dust in that paint or what, but it is just a very subtle touch that you get to notice. This watch, as you spend time with it, as you have it on your wrist, as you just admire its beauty, there are little things like that, like the reflectivity on the printing, that you notice, and you're constantly discovering little tiny just joys, just little details that really make you appreciate what a masterpiece and how well thought out and how well executed this watch really is. And then there are two things on this dial that are totally unique to the spring drive, and one is going to be the date wheel. We have a date wheel here at the 4 o'clock position, and one is going to be that power reserve indicator that's over there at the 8 o'clock, between the 8 and 9 o'clock positions. Now, spring drive date wheels, they're actually wider than your standard date wheel. And it's kind of like a widescreen effect, as I like to look at it. And those numbers are big, and it's so easy to read at a glance. I really like that feature. I'll drop a few comparison pics, but every Grand Seiko spring drive movement, no matter which model it is, you're gonna get that widescreen date wheel that's so cool. And you will also get the power reserve indicator. That is a standard feature on all spring drives. It's not to everyone's liking, but I really like it. I find it handy. This has a 72-hour power reserve. And if you notice on this particular version, it's broken up into 3 different segments so that you can easily at a glance see how many days of power you have left in your spring drive movement. So I think that's a nice touch. And again, the polishing, the finish work on that little power reserve indicator is just perfect. So the dial is one of the most beautiful dials that I've ever seen. It's so legible. It's just a joy to look at, and I hope that that's coming across in the videos and the photos, just how excellent and flawless it is. It really is flawless. Okay, let's talk about the bezel. We have a sapphire, a domed sapphire bezel insert around here, and you can see it kind of follows the convex curvature of that sapphire crystal. There is no anti-reflective coating on it, so depending on the light, it looks black, and you can see those loomed indices, or sorry, that loomed printing of the 2 to 22. And then you get in the, another light, and it almost goes, you know, milky gray. It becomes reflective. So it's a very dynamic bezel. And let me show you the action. It's bidirectional, and there is absolutely zero play in between each position. And another thing that's interesting, you know, most bezels are either 60 or 120 click. This one is actually 72 clicks, which is divisible by 12 or 24, which is a nice thing to have with that additional time zone complication of the GMT hand. So just an interesting thing to note, 72 clicks, and they are perfect. Very, very precise, absolutely no play. The thing that is, I guess you would say, a drawback, if you look at the teeth on the bezel, they're rather small, and they're not difficult to grip, but they're not easy to grip. I mean, it's nothing like a dive watch, a traditional dive watch with larger, more defined teeth. So I guess you could say that that is a downfall to this particular bezel, but you know, it's a little subjective. I have to reach to find negative things to say about this because it is so well done. Every aspect is so well done. Okay, let me show you the case back here. You might be thinking, oh, it's too bad you can't see that gorgeous spring drive movement. And yeah, you know, I wish I could, I kind of wish it did have that display back so I could see that really just marvelous piece of technology. But since this is a sport watch, it is 100 meters water resistance, it does have a screw down crown. I'm okay with the standard screw down case back. And it is absolutely as impressive as the rest of the watch. You have deep grain, you have that beautiful medallion that has the polished Grand Seiko and that lion. You have, you know, a textured kind of matted relief behind it. You have these, I don't know exactly, it kind of looks like pave diamond work, but it's just steel, and it's just a relief that is just visually interesting. It has nothing to do with opening the case back. But the case back, it's beautiful, and you have some lightly etched, you know, serial numbers and just reference stuff down here. So there's the case back. We've talked about the head, basically the head of the watch, the case of the watch, everything about that. We've got to talk about the bracelet and then the movement, and then we'll wrap the video up. I know it's running long. Thanks for staying with me, guys. It's a beautiful watch, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's talk about this bracelet. We have the 5-link, you know, Speedmaster design. This is arguably Seiko's nicest bracelet that they make. There is screw links in here, and you have this stunning clasp. Again, that's the one thing about such beautiful finish work, is it attracts fingerprints and smudges so easily. But you have a really deep polished logo there. Your clasp is long and slender, a nice curve to it. Absolutely secure. Look at that little detail of how the clasp is kind of cut off there, or cut out. So you get good range of motion between the clasp and the link. That's really a nice little touch. And this comes with 2 half links, so you can get a nice secure fit. And the finish work on the bracelet is every bit as deep, beautiful, and defined as on the case and on the rest of the watch. And it is kind of mesmerizing, kind of mesmerizing. So again, let me give you a wrist shot with the bracelet so you can just see how nice that is. It has a really comfortable drape. It just feels excellent quality, and I couldn't be happier with the bracelet. There's some interesting things I'd like to show you though, because it is very different from a Swiss bracelet. I took one of the links out. Here it is. And what's interesting is you have a pin through the center, and then you have a screw on both sides. So you got to unscrew one side, unscrew the other, tap the pin out to change the links, you know, to size the bracelet. So it's very secure. But look at this, and this is different from most Swiss watches. Instead of one piece, this is actually 2, and you can see a nice give and flex to it. So that translates to just a really comfortable feel to the bracelet, where you got that little bit of extra stretch and play from those links. And then also you'll see there is some more lateral flex. And you might be surprised because you don't find that on Swiss watches, at least new, like Rolex and Omega. Their links are all one solid machined link. And I mean, you don't have the lateral flex like you have here on this Grand Seiko. So at first glance, you might think, well, why isn't this tight tolerances like a Swiss Rolex or an Omega? But the Japanese, they approach watchmaking different than the Swiss. It's a very different animal, this beautiful GMT that I have. And the same is with the bracelet. I think Seiko, they put the most value, one, on beauty, finish work, and two, on just practical, everyday wear comfort. So yeah, it does have a little bit more flex. You do have a little bit more give because they've nailed the goal of having a beautifully finished bracelet, but they wanted to make it comfortable and practical. So it's a different feel. It's not anything, it's not bad, but if you're only used to wearing Rolexes and then you get a Grand Seiko bracelet, you might get thrown for a loop initially because you're like, why does this have so much flex and play? Absolutely, I think it's intentional. So there we have the watch in its entirety. We've talked about the bracelet, the case, the hands, the dial, the bezel. Simply beautiful. I do have to note, I think I forgot, the crystal and the bezel have zero anti-reflective coating, but it is an absolutely clear, high-grade sapphire crystal. So you do get beautiful clarity, but you do get a little bit of extra reflections, which really, I think, are intentional. They're meant to add to the dazzling brilliance of this watch. It really doesn't feel like a tool like you would you put on your wrist to tell you the time. This feels like, how would you describe it? Like a work of art that is alive, that it just is brilliant. That's all I can say. It's brilliant. It's a masterpiece. It kind of takes your breath away. And again, like I mentioned before, you're always noticing little tiny small details that just make you appreciate how wonderful this watch is. I know this is several of your Grail watches. You know, I've talked to you, Jeremy and Crystal and Michael. I know there's a few others. And absolutely, it's a worthy Grail. It is simply wonderful. And I'm so happy to have been able to spend some time with it. I'm totally sold on Grand Seiko as a brand, and I can't wait to get one of my own. So the last thing I want to talk about as we wrap up this long video is the movement. Now we have Seiko's spring drive movement, with one of their complications. They do a GMT, and they also do a chronograph in the spring drive movement. And so this is one of their more interesting spring drives, one of the more complicated ones. And I just wanted to talk briefly about it because it is extremely impressive. Seiko, I think when they developed the spring drive, and this has been in development for decades, and it has so many patents, and they've really put their best work and effort into developing this movement, we got to spend some time to talk about it. It's not technically an automatic movement, and it's not a quartz movement. It's kind of a hybrid between the two is the best, most technical way to describe it, but it's a lot more than that. I think Seiko, when they developed this really impressive movement, they took what was great about the automatic mechanical movement, the traditional movement that's in most of our automatic watches, and they said, how can we make this better? How can we take it into the 21st century? How can we make an automatic watch that you get high accuracy quartz-like performance from? And so after a lot of development, a lot of time, effort, trial and error, they finally nailed it down. In the past decade, they've been producing these excellent movements. They're cost effective. They're absolutely, how would you say, they're they're the best. They are the best. I mean, that's debatable and it's subjective, but I'm extremely impressed with this. What you basically have an automatic movement, but instead of a traditional escapement with a pallet fork to regulate how the energy is released into the hands, the timekeeping, they completely took out that escapement wheel and they replaced it with something that they developed called the Tri-Synchro Regulator. And basically it's composed of 3 components, hence the name Tri, and they work in absolute unison off of each other in a closed circuit hence the name Syncro. And regulator is the last word. It regulates how the energy from the mainspring, the mechanical energy, the energy that this has a rotor just like an automatic watch. And as that rotor spins, you wind a mainspring, and that energy from the mainspring goes to the Tri-Synchro regulator. And in a combination of mechanical energy, electric energy, and electromagnetic energy, they regulate how that energy is transferred onto the hands. And so if you look at that second hand, you have an absolutely smooth sweep. You're not getting, a little pallet fork stopping an escapement wheel, 8 times a second. So it looks like it's sweeping, but it's really, stopping several times per second. There's none of that. This is an electromagnetic brake that's applied when needed, so that constant energy from the spring is released in a uniform, perfect, precise, accurate way. And it's really impressive. So because it uses an electromagnetic brake, it's not affected by positional variance. It's more anti-magnetic. I think this is anti-magnetic to 4,800 amperes per meter, if I remember correctly. So it's really impressive. You've got the shock resistance, you have the anti-magnetic properties, you have the automatic winding. This does not take a battery. You will never have to put a battery. There is no battery in this watch. The electric current is from a quartz crystal that is it's grown by Seiko, it's aged, and it's hand inspected. So, it's really, really a cool movement. It's the automatic movement, but taken into the 21st century. The traditional escapement has been nixed and replaced with the Tri-Synchro regulator, which is really cool. So technically it's not an automatic, but I think of it as, yeah, it's an automatic because you are getting the energy from a spring, from an automatic motion of your wrist that winds the rotor, and you don't have to put a battery in. There's nothing solar about it. It is at heart, I guess, an automatic movement that performs with quartz-like accuracy, and you just never get old looking at that beautiful smooth sweep. And this thing is accurate to within 10 to 15 seconds per month. And if you go online, you look at the forums, you're actually getting a lot higher accuracy than that. So really, it's incredible. I'm really a fan. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. Let me talk about the negatives of this watch. I don't think there is such thing as the perfect watch. This comes pretty dang close, but there will be some drawbacks. The first thing, in my opinion, the bezel grip could be improved. It's a little small. Again, the bezel action is perfect. It's beautifully executed, but it'd be nice to have a little bit easier grip on this bezel. So that's the first thing for me. The second thing, it's a little subjective, but the lume on this watch, although LumiBrite is one of the brightest and longest lasting luminescent compounds that you can buy, it's not in high quantities on this watch. And if you are outside, you are in the sun, you're going to get a good charge on that. You walk inside, you'll notice the hands, the 12, 3, 6, and 9. You'll notice that cool loomed bezel, and it'll be visible. You'll get that nice little satisfaction looking at that cool detail. But a couple hours later, you won't be able to tell that there's lume on here because it is just not done in high quantities. Personally, I'm okay with that because I know, yes, this is a sport watch at heart. It is, made to be used hard. It is made to be traveled with. It is 100-meter water resistant screw-down crown. It just feels more like a beautiful dress watch that is just brilliant and impeccable and dazzling, and just makes you fall in love with it because it is so dang pretty. I'm okay with it because it feels more like a dress watch, but it is a sport watch at heart. It's subjective if you consider that a true negative about the watch, or whether you, like me, are okay with it. The last thing is going to be value retention. Grand Seiko, there's just no way to get around it. They have terrible value retention. They are a global brand, and they've been making watches, Grand Seiko watches, for over 50 years. But outside of Japan, they're just not really well known, and they've only been in the global market for a short amount of time, relatively to how long they've been making Grand Seikos. So there's just not an appreciation around the world. They're not as well known. They're not as widely available. So there's just not the demand for it. So, that's a great thing. If you love the watch, you're looking to buy, You can find some amazing deals pre-owned, you know, on the What You Seek forum, on eBay. You know, you can get some really killer deals buying pre-owned. You'll save a lot of money, even off of the discounted authorized dealer price. But if you're looking to sell, you know, you buy one, you don't quite bond with it, you want to flip it, you're going to take an absolute bath of hundreds of dollars because they just don't have the resale value. So a good thing and a bad thing. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before we close, I know we're running long, is, okay, on this beautiful GMT Spring Drive, you'll notice the main logo, the most prominent logo on here is Seiko. It's not Grand Seiko, it's not Creedor, it's nothing like that. It's Seiko, and it's the same logo that you'll find in like a $200 or $300 Seiko. Seiko is really proud of what they've done. This is the epitome of their craftsmanship at the luxury level. This is absolutely brilliant and almost perfect in every aspect. Really is fantastic. And they're proud of it. They put Seiko on the logo. Grand Seiko takes a secondary backseat, I guess, in the logo department. So it's interesting because since this is such a dazzling, brilliant, beautiful watch, people are going to notice it. They go, okay, what kind of watch is that? What are you wearing? And, you know, if you show it to them, they'll see the big Seiko logo, or you'll say, oh, it's a Seiko or a Grand Seiko. People will go, oh, okay, it's a Seiko. They probably got it at the mall, right? It's a nice looking watch, but the moment you tell them, I spent, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 on this, it's a GMT Spring Drive, blah, 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 Soratsu, they'll go, are you crazy? You spent how much on a Seiko? Yeah, we might be a little crazy, so there will be some judgment there. You just got to figure out how you're going to handle it, you know. When people say, what kind of watch is that? Do you just go, hey, it's a Seiko, it's a Grand Seiko, it's a nice watch? Or do you can't help yourself and you spout out how much you paid and you spout out how technically impressive and superior to Rolex and Omega it is, blah, 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 blah. Just be prepared for that. So that's my last comment. I know it's been a long video. I have a lot to say because this is my first Grand Seiko I've spent time with, and it is kind of a dream come true. I'm really impressed with it. Couldn't say enough good about it. I'm going to be sad to see it go, but I'm happy for my family member that has purchased such a beautiful, wonderful watch. And a big thank you to him for allowing me to spend some time to review it. So if you guys have questions, please let me know. I'm going to be doing a comparison tomorrow. I'll be filming it tomorrow of my Marine Master, my tried, trusty, true Marine Master against this Grand Seiko. And I've got some other stuff coming down the pipe. So thanks so much. You guys are so kind, so supportive. I really enjoy interacting with all of you. And I will catch you in the next video. Cheers.